go, will it?
Okay, so good afternoon, everyone. As we've all met, I'm Diane Herron, Vice President of Practical Energy Solutions, and this is my partner and president, Paul Spiegel.
Hi, how are you?
And so, as you know, we're here today to conduct the kickoff meeting, which, based on the proposal, was kind of the first step of the process. So, just going to go through this, and then afterwards, just ask any questions that you might have. So here's the overview. I thought I would talk just a little bit about our company and the approach to the project, and then go into the step one tasks that were in our proposal, the current landscape of energy use in your township, the current regulatory framework, a little discussion about what will it take to get Radnor to your clean energy goals, and how we're going to get there step by step, and take a look at the schedule and the timeline. And then I've prepared for you some communications for the community.
Very. Sorry.
No problem.
Sorry,
Hi.
Hi.
That's so you're definitely on camera.
Yeah.
I wanted to make an entrance.
That I think you've all received a copy of. I have additional printed copies that we can talk about, and you might
This
want to take home.
That I sent out today.
Yeah. You might want to review in more detail. I'm happy to make changes to that. And then question answer. So I think you probably all know from our proposal that we're about a 13-year-old small firm in Westchester, and we do nothing but independent energy consulting. We have no ties to products or services or other firms other than our partners that we bring on board for various projects. And we focus on energy efficiency and renewable energy, and we've done that ever since Paul started the company. And we work primarily in the municipal field, but also, this is our partial client list. We've serviced well over 100 municipalities in the region. One of our biggest clients is the city of Philadelphia. We're helping them achieve a goal to reduce energy use in their entire citywide portfolio of buildings by 30%. And we're in year 7 or 8? 9 of a
3 4-year contracts.
3 4-year contracts.
So we're just starting the third contract. They can only sign a contract for 4 years, and so they have to put it back out for public proposal. And they've selected us again twice now. So it's just getting going.
And we have lots of institutional clients, as you can see, lots of school districts, and commercial customers as well, QVC, PJM Interconnection, Liberty Property Trust, and these others. So, as you know from the proposal, this is the overall approach to the project. I just wanted to review it so that we're all refreshed. This is step one. This is our energy use landscape and our regulatory framework overview and this kickoff meeting. This is step 2, where we're going to, we've already started work on this, identify the key stakeholders, and I've done this Google map evaluation of key energy users in the township. Identify key partners like transportation and utility entities, and then conduct those stakeholder focus group meetings. And then we will deliver a summary of findings from those meetings. The third step will be for us to identify key approaches for the township to conserve, there we go, conserve energy and promote energy efficiency, because that's really the foundation, is making sure that we're not wasting energy, because it makes no sense to buy a solar system, for example. If you're wasting 30% of the energy that you're using, your system's going to be 30% too big and 30% more expensive than it needs to be. We will prioritize these for you and analyze them based on viability, cost, partnerships, and resources required, and deliver to you a summary of our recommendations. Take the same approach for renewable energy generation opportunities for the township. Exact same approach. And then the fifth step, oops. I don't know why I have it labeled stakeholder focus groups. That must be my mistake. But anyway, that's the finalization of the draft plan and the educational outreach materials. We'll review the draft plan with everyone, finalize it, create the final community outreach plan, and present it to the board. And for each of these steps, we're accompanying this with outreach and marketing materials for the community so we can keep them abreast of the progress and make sure that they have an opportunity to participate and provide input and comment. I will fix that slide for you. So we've performed the analysis, your current energy use landscape, and I tried to put this in some context for you because if you just look at the Radnor numbers, you'll say, well, what does that really mean? So the primary source that we've used is the Delaware Valley Regional Planning Commission Energy Use and Greenhouse Gas Emissions Inventory for Greater Philadelphia. And that was published in November of 2018. They're currently working on an update, which is great because we'll be able to update the numbers. And I want to say something about this inventory because way back in 2007, I formed a group in Westchester to do a community-wide project just like this, where we wanted to know how much energy our entire community used and what our greenhouse gas emissions were. And at the time, we didn't have a DVRPC database. There was nothing to turn to, so we contacted PICO and we worked with them on how to measure and quantify this information, and we worked with the Chester County Planning Department and we pulled our own inventory together. Wow. Interestingly, DVRPC subsequently came out with their first inventory, and we compared our numbers to theirs, and they were strikingly similar. Mm. And that gave me a really high confidence level in their numbers, because we worked really hard on ours. And so I wanted to tell you that because I think these numbers are very good, which is why in our proposal we didn't put a lot of money on this step, because we knew this already existed and there's no reason to reinvent the wheel. So I took all of Delaware County and analyzed it so that you could just get some sense of what this means. Your BBTU is billions of British thermal units. It's just a measure of energy, and we're able to translate kilowatt hours and CCFs of gas and gallons of fuel oil and gallons of diesel and everything into British thermal units. So this encompasses all of the energy sources used in the township. And so if you look at all of Delaware County, you're consuming about 8% of all the energy consumed in the county. Your expenditures are close to $100 million on energy, and your greenhouse gas emissions are 404,000 metric tons of carbon dioxide equivalent. So that's a measure of greenhouse gas emissions that impact the climate. So there are greenhouse gases in there that are not carbon dioxide, but they're converted into CO2 equivalents so that we can level the playing field and get one number to compare. So I broke this down further, and as you can see, your biggest energy consuming sector is commercial and industrial, and I imagine that's no surprise to you given your educational institutions that you have here and your corporate centers and your commercial district along Route 30. Your second largest sector is mobile highway, which is also no surprise given the Blue Route and Route 30. And then your residential is about 27%. That little tiny sliver mobile transit is public transportation. So it's broken down on the right by expenditures. And you can see that the percentages aren't exactly mirrored, and that's because there's a different mix of energy sources within each sector. Electricity is very expensive, so the residents pay a little more than they're actually using because they use more electricity. So I worked to give you context as to what this all means. And so I analyzed the DVRPC data, and I looked at the residential energy use per capita within each municipality in Delaware County. And you can see here that Radnor's number 10. In other words, you're 10 out of 49 municipalities in Delaware County.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Does open space and less dense housing affect this rating?
It does, there are some outliers there, like Brookhaven. I don't know why their energy use is so high, but typically the denser, the lower the residential energy use. And typically the wealthier, the higher.
Yes.
People with more money have bigger homes, they have more computers,
So
Lots
Brookhaven
of
really
stuff.
is an outlier.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I actually have a call into DVRPC to ask them if their numbers are accurate, if they have any thoughts on that.
Rutledge would be the one I think is an outlier because it is,
Tiny.
yeah, it's like 2 city blocks.
Yeah.
Yeah, that one.
Yeah.
But it's per capita.
Maybe it's the old housing stock in Brookhaven, that it's less efficient, and so they use more energy to heat.
I don't
Could be,
see
but it's
Brookhaven
so-
as old.
It's so different, which,
No, it's a community coming out 420 from Chester. So
Yeah,
it's
I know
sort of
what it
the
is.
overflow. I mean, I used to work with people who lived in Chester, and Brookhaven was one of the places they would like to go. In fact, that was part of the white flight out of Chester after the Second World War. So it's really a blue-collar community.
yeah. So I'm going to see if maybe there's an anomaly in DVRPC data, but I think the take-home message here is that per capita, the residential energy use in Radnor is pretty high.
Yeah.
So we're in the top 10 out of 50, so we're in the top
Out of-
20%.
I wanted to show you your fuel mix. So you can see that natural gas is your biggest fuel. Then it goes to electricity, and gasoline is not far behind. That's the gasoline from all the traffic, the trucks and cars. Diesel and fuel oil. And then the expenditures on the right, again, don't mirror that because of the differences per BTU. Electricity, again, is more expensive. Natural gas is actually artificially low right now. So this is electricity use by sector, and just to show that your commercial industrial is using the vast majority of the electricity in the township. This is natural gas. They're using the majority of natural gas, but residents use a fair amount as well.
Excuse me, when you say commercial industrial,
Yes,
we're not known as having an industry in
per
the
sector.
manufacturing
Right.
sense. So it's really commercial.
It's mostly just commercial, yeah.
And institutional.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Institutional centers, okay.
And that's just the label that DVRPC
Right.
uses. I mean, for purposes of Radnor, I could certainly change that and say commercial and institutional would probably be more accurate.
So on institutional, for instance, we have a lot of colleges
Yeah.
in Radnor. Is a dorm residential, or is a dorm, if it's part of a university, is it institutional? I mean,
Yeah.
you guys know
That's
that,
how it
or-
would be metered through
We also have a
PICO.
tremendous number of private schools.
Institutional.
I know you do.
Yeah.
It's staggering.
I know.
Yeah, they pay commercial rates for electricity for their
Right.
facilities.
Right.
So that's how they get classified.
Does that answer your question?
Yes, thanks.
So this is interesting. This is what we worked on, thanks to the information Ben sent. Your municipal operations account for 0.2, it's actually 0.19% of all the energy use in the township, which is
Wow.
Amazing.
not atypical. I mean, it's just important to keep that in mind when it comes to thinking about, well, what is the role of the municipality? It's to be a model. It's to put forth ordinances and programs for the rest of the community. But even if you went net zero here, you're not gonna do much. That's not saying you shouldn't.
I was
You
going to
should
say,
be a
don't show
model.
that to a lot of people.
Right.
Well, it's on the web, so it's too late.
So the conclusions I've drawn from this analysis is that, first of all, the community spends about $100 million annually on energy. And your greenhouse gas pollution from fossil fuel energy use is equivalent to the emissions of about 88,000 passenger cars on the road for 1 year. And if you wanted to offset that and sequester all of that greenhouse gas pollution, you would need to plant 18.6 million very mature trees. So this again is a way to put this in context as to the amount of pollution that's being produced just in your township from fossil fuel energy. This is the part of the Google map analysis I did, and again, your commercial and institutional is the largest user of all three fuel sources, and therefore this sector must be a target and we must actively pursue them to participate. This map shows all of your educational institutions.
Wow.
Your commercial in the yellow, and I included the golf courses as commercial, and your corporate and healthcare I put together in pink, and I don't think I've overlooked anything major, but I'm still working on this. Another conclusion is your residential energy use is relatively high. So therefore, efficiency measures targeted to the residential sector will be foundational, very important, as will efficiencies in buildings in all of the sectors. And one way to begin this is through mandatory benchmarking, which many cities and communities across the country have done. And it's an excellent way to get not necessarily residents, but residents too, lots of commercial entities to track their energy use, because that's the first step in raising that awareness. Like, wow, look at all the energy we're using, and look how much I'm spending. So this one I'd like to explain. Natural gas, again, is your largest fuel source in the township, and transportation is such a big contributor to energy use. So a key strategy is going to have to be to move toward electrification of buildings and vehicles, because gas is gas is gas. It's a fossil fuel, and what is really happening in many places across the country is this move toward getting off of gas and moving toward electric vehicles, electrification of heating systems, because that's how we produce clean renewable energy, from solar power, wind power, and it's really the only way we're really going to meet these goals. And you can see, California, of course, is a very different place, and we all know that. But they recently became the first American city to ban natural gas infrastructure in new buildings. Several other California cities are considering electrification ordinances for their buildings. New Jersey's draft energy master plan for the entire state will end natural gas use in buildings by 2030. And there are some laws in Maine that are trying to progressively reduce natural gas use in buildings. And 8 states, along with DC and Puerto Rico, have established 100% clean electricity goals. I wanted to put that in there so everyone knows that this is happening. It's happening across the country, and it's not, even though it sounds like, wow, that's a big, heavy lift, and how would we do that? It's happening, and townships like Radnor can follow the examples of other communities that have already paved the way.
And can help set the example for
Yes.
other communities
Yeah.
as well.
Yes.
You know, you're trying to reduce your energy use and then use as much renewables as you can, but also communities like this can be putting pressure on PECO to clean up their part of the energy generation, the electricity generation. So it's important to get this critical mass of communities that are behind this work.
And southeast Pennsylvania is really, I mean, there's so many townships that are working on the same issues with the same goals, that it's not, you're setting a model, but you're also not sticking out your neck to have somebody chop it off.
That's
and
right.
you have advocacy power with the rest of the state of Pennsylvania, with the state government.
Right.
This means some zoning and saldo work.
Mm-hmm.
Because I know in some communities, if you're building a new house, you are required, you're not putting in natural gas, it's required that it be geothermal or electrical. And I know you were talking, Ruth and her husband are leaders in their condo association, which is, what, how old?
It was built in the 1950s.
Right. So she's looking at replacing heat pumps that are some date back to the 50s. So
Well, only 2 of them will date back to the 50s.
Right.
So, and I can point them out to you. They're really ugly.
Yeah.
But you know, so one of the things that I would like to do is have some standardization of heat pumps as people are replacing them, to replace them with something that's a little more standard. So I know that I was reading your bigger proposal, and that really addresses how many BTUs or how energy efficient they should be when you're going to. And we did have an energy audit, and one of the things that someone recommended to us was that when you replace your hot water heater, replace it with with one that has a heat pump on the top of it, and then the heat pump draws the humidity out of your basement area. You don't have to have
I've
a
had one
dehumidifier.
for 6 years. Yeah,
Hmm.
it's great.
Yeah.
And it uses, I think, about 40% of the energy that my electric resistance hot water heater uses. It's on its own meter, so I'm able
Wow.
to.
Yes.
It
Yes.
has an off-peak meter, and then they eliminated
Yes.
that for me. But yeah, the only issue, it makes it a little cool in the basement during the winter. It's not a bad thing in the summer.
Yes.
It does take the heat out of the air in whatever room it's in. But yeah, the hot water heat was 30% of my energy bill and my electricity use, and I cut it more than a half. So
Yeah.
it's a great opportunity.
Yep.
Yep.
And we talked about this municipal energy use is small, but municipal modeling, programming, and regulation are essential to moving the community forward.
and this building. Because we shared with you the heat map that PECO did for us, and they projected, not knowing what it'll cost to do the modifications, that we could save 30%, $30,000 of a $90,000 bill every year. So it became, for Bob Zinkowski, that became a great selling point.
Yeah, that's what we do. We go into buildings, we do assessments, and we find, in fact, we're working with another township right now, and they have 2 pretty new buildings with really nice, sophisticated systems and controls. And we benchmarked them, and they were so inefficient. And it was the control system that needs to be refined, but we can refine that control system and get them to become models in the community in terms of efficiency. So buildings, no matter how old they are or how new they are, we find big opportunities everywhere we go.
Well, in this building, the heat and the air conditioning are both on all the time. It just depends which is dominant. And in our commissioners' meetings, Steve Norsini, who's the engineer, he's constantly tweaking the thermostat. Because it's cold when we first get in, so they put some heat, and then as the atmosphere becomes more and more energized, and he's lowering the thermostat, and it just does not make sense.
Stay the temperature. Well, try to, but you said it too, so it hasn't stopped.
Yeah.
Under cold.
But Paul likes to say when you have the heat and air conditioner going at the same time, you end up with a thunderstorm in the middle of the room.
Well, we have our own
We get
thunderstorm.
thunderstorms all the time in this building.
Yeah.
We could go after that.
Yeah, there's always opportunities.
Yeah.
It's amazing how many things get set up improperly in a new building or over time, just with little tweaks for a specific event, they might override something, and the systems are so complex and powerful now that they don't realize the other things that they're changing by making changes, how much outside air is coming in, what the temperature of the chilled water is for cooling, or the temperature of the hot water for heating. All of those things affect the energy use and the comfort in the building. A lot of times we find that when we're making a building operate more efficiently, that everybody's more comfortable as well. So it's actually not saying, put on a sweater, we're going to try to save energy. It's actually going to be more comfortable because we're saving energy.
Okay, so on to the next phase in step one. And that was, we, in our proposal, said that we would put together sort of a framework of current regulation and incentives, just to give everybody an understanding of what's available and kind of what the regulatory landscape looks like, because it presents challenges to achieving clean energy goals in some cases, and in other cases we're seeing good opportunities. So there's a lot here. I'm just going to sort of breeze through them. They're also explained in the document that you can read as well. So I think we're all familiar with Act 129, which is the PICO rebate incentive program. If you want to put in the municipal building, for example, LED lighting, which would help to start to turn you into a model of efficiency, you can get really good rebates from PICO for doing that.
Hear that then.
Just little model lights.
Yeah.
But
if
my
you-
question is the township applying? I know that Bob changed the lights in the lobby,
Yep.
and I heard Steve McNellis say on Monday night that they were changing some street lights to LEDs. My question is the township seeking those through PICO?
The ones in the lobby, and we tried to, they were not eligible because of the way the project was then. I'm not sure about the streetlight ones. They're not.
So there's
Lights
an
are
avenue
probably
for
custom.
administration. Because I know I spoke to Nancy Campbell of the Wayne Art Center. She had a $2,000 bill from Keith Martin, who's a local electrician, to change some of the lights at the Art Center. And I said to her, don't do that before you've talked to Steve Clark to get to, and she cut the bill in half.
Mhm. You
Because
have
she
to
didn't
go-
know that you could.
Right.
This
Right,
is,
and
half
that's
of this is making
An
people aware.
easy thing the township can do is to communicate this information so people know. You have to put your applications in before you do the work,
Yeah.
which is another important
You
piece.
have like a certain amount of quotes, and
Mhm.
yeah, it's a lot of, so it kind of slows down the process too. So that's keep people away.
So we're currently in phase 3 of Act 129, which ends June of next year. And we're now talking about phase 4 and what that might look like. And that will go from June next year through June of 2025. It's currently in the planning stages, but there's a lot more potential money available to fund the program, which is great. And I put at the bottom of the slides, and this will be in our recommendations, but these are just some previews. The Keystone Energy Efficiency Alliance is advocating very hard to get the funding and to expand this program, and this is the kind of advocacy work that municipalities who are all part of the Ready for 100 program could get together and help push this forward. And I can give you a lot more information than what you see here.
So specifically, is that advocacy to ensure that phase 4 occurs or is funded?
Is well funded, and that the actual rebate programs are going to really incentivize people to do the work. That we get good rebates.
Is the rebates going to be commercial or is it going to extend to residential?
It'll be both.
Both?
Yep. Here's another one that we like. It's a federal, it's called the 179D, Energy Efficient Commercial Tax Deduction. If you own a commercial building and you make it more efficient than the 2007 code to a certain measure, you can get up to $1.80 per square foot tax deduction for that work. This expires at the end of this year. This is another opportunity to advocate for extending this, which they have done in the past, but we're hoping they do again.
And when they say commercial, is that only commercial? Is it nonprofit and institutional, or is it just
commercial?
Nonprofit and institutional.
Don't pay
Institutional
taxes.
would be eligible, but it's a tax deduction.
okay? And they don't pay taxes.
But they can actually assign those tax deductions to the contractor or the designer or split it between them. So it actually reduces the fees of the contractors doing the work. So there is an opportunity to take advantage of it even though you're not a taxed entity.
So this is like a near-term potential opportunity for commercial businesses in Radnor this year if they can jump on the opportunity.
And this has been in place since 2005, but they keep letting it expire and then they approve it retroactively. So I think in December or January, they approved it retroactively to January of 2019, but extended it through this year, which most years they've only gone back a year and not forward a year. So it's the first time in a little while. And that's a federal.
Do
that's
we
a
have
federal
any sense
law.
of the likelihood that they'll keep infusing life into it in the, for the near
It
future?
seems that that's the case.
That's
that they
the
will keep doing it.
historical
That's the-
pattern.
So it is an opportunity for your businesses here in the township to take advantage of. And a lot of people aren't aware of this.
Yeah, I was wondering how they get the word about it. 'Cause
Maybe through some stakeholder engagement as
Yeah.
part of this
Yeah.
process.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, we have a lot of educating.
And we can provide like case examples of people who've used this and how it benefited.
And then once you have some entities in the township that are taking advantage of it, you use that success to say, look, your neighbor across the street, the other office building across the street just did all these upgrades. 100,000 square foot building, they got $180,000 tax deduction.
Yeah, if you could do a Google, not you, but if someone could do a Google Earth approximation of the office space, you could go through them. We think you could save X amount of dollars. Would you love to be in the room to advocate for this?
Oh, I think Brandywine, who has most of the corporate buildings
They
in
should
the
know off the
township.
top of their head how many square feet they have.
Right.
That's right. I think they're a real target. Now to the,
They're fairly proactive. I know their buildings in Center City, Philadelphia, they've been pretty proactive in trying to get them Energy Star certified.
but if we can lift them up as the shining example on the hill,
Yeah, absolutely.
then that begins, because Brandywine says that they have 5,000 employees in Radnor Township. So,
It's a lot.
and 75 of them ride the jitney from the train. I know those figures.
Right. Wow.
Okay. Here's some more opportunities. There's a lot of low-interest loan programs for energy efficiency. There's also a grant program, Pennsylvania DEP Small Business Advantage Grant Program. If you reduce your energy use 25% or more, you can get grant funds for the work. It includes solar thermal systems, and there's $1 million available every year. There's low interest loans available through the state, 2% fixed rate for 10 years for efficiency work. We've worked on these latter two, the Energy Works and the Pennsylvania Green Energy Loan Fund. We've been a qualifier for those funds. We take applications and make sure they're actually achieving the 25% energy reduction so they qualify. These are for commercial entities.
That includes institutional and nonprofits.
Yeah.
as
And
well.
nonprofits.
Yeah. So these are structured specifically to promote energy efficiency and to help businesses pay for the work in a very beneficial way. I mean, we've had cases sometimes where the loan payment is less than the savings that they're achieving on the utility bill. So it makes lots of economic sense.
Cash back.
CPACE, I think we've talked about. This is passed in the state legislature in 2018. It's the Commercial Property Assessed Clean Energy Program. And the beauty of this is you can get a low interest, long-term, 100% loan for clean energy, clean water, and energy efficiency projects, again, in commercial properties. The key is that the loan stays on the property tax bill. So if I'm a property owner and I'm planning on selling my building in 2 years, traditionally I'm not going to put a whole bunch of money into that building. But now I can go ahead and do it and not be burdened with the costs of that project. It will pass on to the new owner. These are already adopted in 32 states across the country and approved by 9 counties in Pennsylvania, but not yet Delaware County. So here's another advocacy opportunity, and I think with the new county council, I don't see why they wouldn't do this.
Yeah, I think we're looking at that with the Delaware County ready for 100 teams.
Great, excellent. I think I did speak with the Chester County folks, and we haven't implemented this in Chester County yet. None of the Pennsylvania counties have, because there's some, and I'm working on getting more information, but there's some conflict at the local level with the tax assessing laws, and there's something holding this up. And so the Chester County solicitor is going to call me, and I'll get more information on that. But they're working through it.
Yeah, I think the holdup is that there's a fee that's being charged by the county to manage the program under their property tax collection, and something in the state constitution that they're not
Says they
allowed to
can't do
generate
that.
a fee for property taxes, although this isn't a property tax. So there's a little bit of a conflict that they're trying to work out and get a final ruling on.
And
The
you know,
solicitors
the
are-
first assessments in Delaware County come out this week.
Oh, I heard that on the radio.
Yes,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
we get to protest it or correct it,
Mhm.
but I think all of us are, at least I know I am sitting on pins and needles waiting to see how the county decides what my property is worth.
Right. This does not change your assessment
Right.
of the value of your
Just adds
property.
But
Loan
it's,
onto it,
it's
yeah.
it's
The
a
main-
layer on it.
Yeah, the main thing they're trying
Commercial
to do
properties.
is
Commercial.
connect the loan to the property so that like right now, if a business went to a bank and said, I want to do an energy efficiency upgrade, they'll give them maybe a 7-year loan. That might be the longest term they
Right.
can get. Since it's tied to the property now, that reduces the risk of a longer term loan. So you get a 15-year loan, their annual payments on the loan then become lower, to what Diane said before, lower than what the energy savings are.
Right.
So you pay no money out of pocket, you borrow the money, and you make money on it immediately. So that kind of opportunity, it just expands that to all kinds of businesses.
Key is helping commercial property owners understand how this works and the benefit to them.
Just quickly, I went to the website for CPACE in Pennsylvania, and it noted that local governments can adopt it, but I
It's
don't
just
know.
been counties so far that adopt it and then structure the ordinance so all the individual municipalities in that county can use the county tax structure. 'Cause
Okay.
the county is the one that's collecting
So
the
it's,
property tax.
So you need the county to go first and then the.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right. We work on these too. Paul's more familiar with these than I am. But the PJM interconnection, the agency that manages the grid in Pennsylvania, Jersey, and Maryland, has incentive programs. So we call these negawatts. You reduce your wattage, you're going negative, and they turn that into a revenue stream because they want you to permanently reduce your load. Because when we tax the grid, it's a problem for them to manage. And it's in their interest for us to reduce the load permanently. So they will provide quarterly payments for up to 4 years for entities that can permanently reduce the amount of electricity they're using. There's also a demand response program. So what that is in the middle of the summer, for example, on a 100-degree day, everybody's got their air conditioner turned on at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And it taxes the grid to the point of risk of brownout. And so they will pay companies to power down during those times of peak demand so they can manage the grid. That is not necessarily an energy saving opportunity because oftentimes they'll have to run a generator. But what this does, it can be fairly lucrative and it can give them funding for efficiency projects. Anything else you want to say about that?
Yeah, it becomes, besides taxing the grid, the real-time price of electricity fluctuates throughout the day, and the most expensive you tend to get is the
Peak hours.
hottest humid day, peak hour. And so they can pay companies 15 cents a kilowatt hour to not use electricity rather than bring on a power plant that costs them 40 cents a kilowatt hour. Or I think on the hottest days I've seen here, it was over $1 a kilowatt hour real-time price.
Yeah.
The only time I saw it higher than that was in the polar vortex. And early in the morning, it was like $1.40 a kilowatt hour. Real-time prices of natural gas spiked, and there were shortages, and it was a real issue. But it makes more economic sense for them to pay people to stop using it briefly. But they can use that revenue to fund efficiency projects and other upgrades to their buildings.
All right, so that's it for efficiency. Now I want to move into the clean energy generation piece of this, incentives and the regulatory landscape. I think this is really important for people to understand. It wasn't that long ago that it's like, oh, solar, that's so expensive. But look at this chart. The cost has declined more than 70% since 2010. The cost of solar is now on par with fossil fuels, and from the standpoint of generating electricity at the power plant, it's cheaper than coal. We are there economically.
Yeah, what's really interesting there is that 15 years ago, people would not do a solar project unless they could get a grant for 50% of the project. And people still have that in their minds that they need this 50% grant. But if you look there, we're at 25% of the cost. It's actually cheaper than it was 15 years ago with a 50% grant. So, real opportunity going forward.
I think my experience in communities, and a lot of it was based on information from the Al Gore, it's Pittsburgh, not Paris, which is the one I went, is the way they got communities started was in, I'm not going to call it a housing development, but when housing was built, they talk one owner into solar. And the first community meeting, everybody was saying, well, what's your electric bill now? By the end of a year, the entire area had solar, show and tell,
Wow, yeah.
showing the reduction in the electric bill. Is a tremendous stimulus to move forward on this. And Dan's church in Wayne has done that. And they were on your Chester County tour to go solar. And there are churches, because we have this sort of ministerium group that's ramping up for the creation care climate change. I've heard several churches say, we've got all that roof space. Let's talk about putting solar on. And all they need to do is be convinced by seeing real saving in dollars. And then they'll move in.
What is PECO's situation or plans to incorporate renewable into their power generation?
Oh, we're going to get
You're
to
gonna
that.
get-
Yep.
okay.
First, though, this slide covers clean energy grants and loans. There's a Pennsylvania Solar Energy Program, which provides both loans and grants up to $1 million for businesses, municipalities, counties, and school districts for on-site clean energy generation, like solar PV. There's we call it the AFIG, the Alternative Fuels Incentive Grant, for converting your fleet, and it's $1,500 per electric vehicle.
And I think there's still grants available for charging stations under the Volkswagen.
I think you're
Under
right.
Volkswagen.
Yeah, I didn't put the VW7. There's more than you see here, it's just that we can keep adding to the list. There's the Alternative and Clean Energy Program for businesses, schools, and governments, up to $2 million or 30% of your project cost if you want to put a solar system in. And the green energy loans and mortgages, certain banks offer these with lower interest rates for efficient buildings.
Again, it's just making people aware
Huge
that these things,
educational
that's what it seems to me
opportunities.
anyhow, is education, education, education in the beginning. Bet you dollars to donuts, Radnor Township School District has no awareness of these funding sources.
They have large roof areas,
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yep.
big dish flat.
Yeah. So this is a part of the answer to your question, Mark. There's the Pennsylvania and states across the country have passed these alternative energy portfolio standard requirements. And these are,
This is the Reggie?
no,
No, not Reggie, okay.
these require your suppliers like PECO, your generators, to purchase a certain portion of their wholesale electricity from alternative sources. So right now, they're requiring utilities in Pennsylvania to have 18% of their source mix from alternative sources by 2021. Right now, we're at about 15%. One of the issues is that, and this is outlined in this written piece that I gave you, is that,
Page 6.
there are, two tiers of sources that the state defines as alternative. So tier 1 is what is basically clean energy. It's solar, it's wind. And they're requiring only 8%, only of this 18%, to be from tier 1, or the clean sources. 10% can be from large-scale hydropower, which is clean but controversial. Waste coal, which is more polluting than virgin coal. Municipal solid waste, byproducts of wood processing, and other things. So this isn't exactly 18% solar when you look at it. Right now, it's only 0.5% required to be generated from solar out of the whole 18%. So there is a lot of lobbying going on to try to improve this. There's a group called Renewables Work for Pennsylvania. They're working to increase these goals. I'm sorry, it's 30% by 2025. I'll fix that too.
Instead of 18.
Yes,
Yeah.
it's 30% by
That's what I
2025.
thought.
And also to increase the requirement for truly green energy generation. This is critical because we talked about electrification earlier to get off natural gas. But if our electric supply is dirty, that's not going to get us anywhere. So this is extremely important. And you can see that states all around us have much more aggressive goals than we do.
And they don't have that tier 2.
Right.
So is wind included in the
In one.
18%?
Yes, it's included in tier 1.
Tier 1,
Some lobbying occurred to bring about tier 2 as part of that.
To bring about what?
That's how that
The
got in
waste
there.
Somebody worked to put dirty coal and other things in that
okay.
18%.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
There's also the solar power. It's a federal investment tax credit, which is actually great. Up until this year, it was 30% of the total cost of the solar system. You could get a federal tax credit. They've changed that, so this year it's 26%, next year it'll be 22%, and this is for residential or commercial. But at 2022 and beyond, it will be 10% for commercial installations only.
Well, this is the solarized program that Philly has done. Montgomery County's working on. Delaware County was, but it ran into a couple of walls, and it really doesn't exist at this point. There's some that would like to relaunch it.
Solarize is like a group
Yeah.
purchasing program, and they take advantage of the tax
Yes.
credit to make
Yes.
it financially attractive.
Yeah, and the more people who sign up, the lower the cost.
Yeah.
Because I don't know what happened in Delaware County, but it didn't seem to work out.
Yeah, Philly's done a great job.
Yes.
Yeah. And that'll probably be in our list of recommendations, to aggregate the solar purchasing in the community to reduce the cost, the install cost.
Which really Delco Ready for 100 could spearhead.
It involves selecting certain vendors, right?
Yeah, to
So
work
that
with you
seems
and-
a little, I mean, I guess that's just something you go through, is that process of selecting.
Somebody said that it's basically a volunteer full-time job for about 9 months to get it off the ground.
It is. None of these things are necessarily light lifts. I mean, there's a lot of educational work and, this is kind of technical and detailed, and so the way we communicate this out is really important, so people don't think, oh, that's too complicated. To try to simplify it as much as possible and help people understand the benefits to them.
It's one of the reasons we chose you, is that we could understand what your reply to the request for
It's
proposal.
the truth.
Oh, it is, yeah.
And your materials, your educational materials
Right.
were very
Oh, wonderful.
Thank you.
accessible.
Oh, we learned pretty quickly you were already getting your feet wet in Chester County.
Yeah.
So some of the pitfalls might not be so deep.
But we really pay attention to that detail of making sure things are understandable.
Yes.
Because I work on energy all day, every day, and I've gone to see people speak that are experts, and I don't understand what they're saying. And I think, what's the chance that anyone else in the crowd can understand? We kind of pull some of our engineers, sometimes we have to tell them, speak English, don't talk in acronyms, and
Yes.
you know, it's kind of industry speak. It's hard for
Well,
people to follow.
Paul has his degree in economics, and I have mine in English literature.
Oh,
So
wow.
we kind of try really hard on the communications end, because
Mhm.
if that doesn't work, then that's kind of the first order of business.
And I learned engineering on the job. I'm a registered engineer now, and I teach engineering at Temple University, but I've learned the practical elements of engineering and not necessarily all of the theoretical,
The
the things that
physics
you
of
don't
engineering.
use. And so I think Diane's been really amazing at picking all of that up as well. But we tend to explain it simply because that's how it connects with us when we hear someone else do that for us. It's important. The message is important.
So this is another, if this passes, this would be big.
Yes, really
Community
big.
solar. Right now, you're not permitted to build a little solar farm somewhere and ask all your neighbors to join in to participate and buy a piece. This would change that, which would really be a wonderful thing, because about 50% of the rooftops in the country, they're either structurally not sound, they're shaded, there's some reason they can't put panels on. This gives everyone an opportunity to get solar power to their homes.
There must be some economies of scale you get too. Instead of each
Huge.
homeowner buying something for their own roof, you
Yeah.
buy it. Yes.
Definitely. So the good news is there's a bill in the House and a bill in the Senate, and there's 53 bipartisan sponsors. It definitely has bipartisan support, and we are hopeful. I mean, you never know. That this might pass this spring, and if it does, it'll probably be about a year before anything really comes to fruition, because it has to go through the PUC. Everything has to be worked out. But this would be a wonderful step, and we could start to plan around it if it passes.
Is this applied just to residents or also commercial?
I think it's anyone.
Believe so.
So how did the city of Philadelphia's solar farm, which is out near Gettysburg someplace, that's just the municipal buildings, so it
Not really
didn't
community.
fall into the community solar trap.
Right, yeah,
And
it's
Liz,
just
because
one
one of the
layer.
companies
One
that
layer.
does it is located in Wayne. I
Yeah,
can't remember the name of
community
it.
That's
energy.
right, and they're going to be a partner. They have to be a partner. They're right here in your backyard.
Right.
And they do wonderful things. They have wonderful programs.
So maybe this is not the time for this question, but living in the condominiums, I went to that, was it Google Solar, where you can see where you could have enough light on your rooftop to use solar or to make it worthwhile. Well, the condominium that I live in is perfect, and one on
Cool.
either side of it are perfect. But the question one of our questions is, who owns the roof? So So rather than get into that discussion, my thinking is if we could take the solar energy from those 3 roofs and have it metered so that the condominium association gets the credit for it. Because we have lights all throughout the property, and the lights in the little vestibules and the hallways
Yeah.
are all go to the St. David's Park,
Uh-huh.
condo association. Then that would benefit everybody in the condominiums, because it would reduce either what we pay on a monthly fee, or we could keep the monthly fee what it is and use the savings for doing other things on our property. Do you think there would be a metering problem with that? I mean, one of the things we heard about when we went to the last presentation that we went to is that, there are it has to all go through one meter.
Right. Yeah, they would want to net meter it through one meter with the utility. The other issue is, do each of the condo owners have their own account with PICO, or is it all paid by the condo association?
So we each
for the
have our own
individual?
account with PICO, but the condo association has an account as well.
Right, as long as the solar isn't generating more than what the common areas are using, then you'd be okay. After that, it starts to get into community solar. Now you have multiple ratepayers all wanting to tap into one solar array, and I think it becomes an issue.
But you could figure that out.
Mhm.
I mean,
Yeah, figure out how big
we
the
know
array
How
what-
big the
Yeah.
array needs to be to produce X amount of energy to pay the bill.
Sure.
Yeah.
The other thing, the way Philadelphia did it was they issued an RFP and said, we want someone to build a solar farm that's going to generate, I don't know, what percent
I
of
think it
their
was 20%
25?
is what I read.
22%, but yeah, they had a certain size that they wanted to generate.
Yeah.
Now, what Westchester's doing, because we're collaborating with we've got 7 municipalities working together, is aggregating all of the municipal energy use and putting out a single RFP. And I believe that's permissible, because that's not community solar, that's a PPA for a solar installation.
Right.
So one thing I would love to look into for you is, what if you aggregated all of your educational institutions and they did the same thing? Build a big solar farm out by Gettysburg that would, generate enough power to meet their needs.
Yeah, one of the great benefits about what the city's doing is they have a fixed rate for 20 years.
Right.
4.5 cents a kilowatt hour, which
And it's
is
a very good
20%
rate.
less than what they're paying now. And they have cost certainty for 20 years.
It makes huge financial sense right now. You save money, and like Paul said, people ask us all the time, since we're in the business, what do you think electric prices are going to do next month? And we're like, we have no clue. They could go like this, and to have that certainty at a really good rate is wonderful for financial planning and for businesses. So,
In my mind, as the temperature increases, open parking lots are going to
Canopies,
be
yep.
not desirable, and if they all had solar canopies, they could generate the electricity, plus they keep the cars cooler, and because, who knows whether we're going to have snow, the surface of the parking lots are not run over and deteriorated because they're not getting snow plows or whatever.
And you could
is-
be charging your car, and you could be paying people a little fee, charging a little fee, which
Yep.
pays for the canopy
Yep.
Right.
And
maintenance.
you can build in a stormwater system.
And you
Right.
build in the stormwater. I mean, our brains are cooking. It's just educating the township to go, oh, well, that would be a good opportunity.
So
There's the big step.
Sure.
I did a quick thing with $100 million per year Radnor spends on energy divided by 30,000 residents. And if you say 25%, you can say 25% with conservation. Everybody gets an $800 check for the year. So,
which is high, for
No,
a proportion of the
that's
township
savings,
is
not
higher
the
than
investment
the
it took to get the
taxes.
savings, but, yeah,
Sure.
Yeah.
some things that might be eye-catching.
Might be.
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, so back to our legislative picture. We have some things pending. And I put this little image down at the bottom because what we have going on in Harrisburg is people pushing for clean and people pushing for fossil. So we have the Pennsylvania Clean Transportation Infrastructure Act. It's a Senate bill. That is, I think, fantastic. It would establish a framework for creating electric vehicle infrastructure throughout the state and establish a goal to increase vehicle electrification 50% by 2030. Here's the other side of the coin. We have someone in the House who's introduced a bill that would impose $250 tax on hybrids and electric vehicles.
Because they're not gonna be buying gas.
Right, they're not
Right,
paying
they
the
won't be
gas
paying
tax.
the gas.
They won't pay the gas tax, which came on when? Was the Johnstown flood? I think
It's
that's,
been around for a
that's-
while, man.
that's part of the gas tax that we pay in Pennsylvania.
First Johnstown.
Yes.
There's this one I don't like. Energize PA is a House bill which gives a huge tax credit to promote the construction of new petrochemical and fertilizer plants in Pennsylvania. This is because of the glut of fracked gas that we have. Not that this directly affects Radnor, but in my mind, when you look at the big picture and the goals you're trying to achieve, you know, this would create a tremendous amount of horrible pollution, and it would just undermine all of these wonderful efforts.
Yeah, why are we making these sacrifices when, yeah.
Well, and it's diverting tax credit resources from
Yeah,
this,
exactly.
right?
Yeah.
Seen as
Right.
It indirectly
Yeah.
affects us.
Yeah.
Yes,
it should
That's-
do.
This is RGGI, the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative, which was an executive order by Governor Wolf to join Connecticut, Delaware, Maryland, Maine, Massachusetts, New Hampshire, New York, Rhode Island, and Vermont, and soon to be New Jersey and Virginia. They're all capping the CO2 emissions that are permitted to come from electric power generation. And they create like a carbon budget trading program. So if I more than meet the goal, I can trade with someone who hasn't met the goal. And according to the executive order, the regulations are supposed to be presented by July of this year. But Pennsylvania lawmakers are aggressively trying to block the executive order. If
Some are
they-
working on the regulations and sort of encouraging it, right?
Yes.
But others are, yeah.
Yes. If they're able to get the support to pass a law that would overturn this, I believe Governor Wolf said he would veto it, and then they said they would sue him. So this could make, you know, but then it could be held up in the courts.
Yeah.
So it remains to be seen what will happen with this. We do a lot of work in Delaware because of the RGGI program. We go to all schools across the entire state and we do energy audits, and we work with the students, and they propose efficiency projects to their school boards, and then we report that back to the Sustainable Energy Utility in Delaware, and they report it to the RGGI program. So it's a great way to incentivize projects, and also, again, you know, get PECO to cut the amount of fossil fuels that they're using to generate power.
I think the estimate that I saw was that between $200 and $400 million a year would be generated that could be used to fund clean energy projects and energy efficiency projects.
And those were in smaller states in Pennsylvania. That's based on
No, that was
experience
an
in other
estimate
states?
for what
Oh, estimate,
Pennsylvania.
oh.
Yeah, the governor's office of energy had a representative out in Chester County last week to
Ah.
give a talk on that program. They had another expert who's worked in the RGGI programs in other states, and based on the makeup of Pennsylvania, they were estimating
That's what they were.
close to $400 million per year.
And we know
Used to
Greg
fund
Vitale
projects.
is promoting RGGI.
Yeah.
And he's serves part of our township.
Mhm.
And I'm sure Dalen is the same. I mean, you know, it's very pro from our local legislators. Not so much in the middle of the state, but
No, right.
So the conclusions I've drawn from this is the Act 129 extension, CPACE, Community Solar, and Reggie offer the most immediate potential advantages for us, and expanded alternative energy portfolio standards that we talked about. It's key. And there are definitely existing programs, grants, loans, incentives that we can absolutely take advantage of right away. So I put these scenarios out because we have to start thinking, like, what will it really take to get to where you want to be? So I looked at, if we transitioned the residential, commercial, and institutional sectors, 50% of them generate solar electricity. And we're able to reduce electricity use an additional 10% due to efficiency programs. That would reduce our total fossil fuel electricity consumption by 60% in the township. That's just electricity, right? So if we did this and we looked at the total municipal-wide energy use, this would reduce that by 24%. I just did that just to help us start to think about what it really is going to take. But if, you know, we're able to get 50% of everybody on solar and get a 10% additional reduction due to efficiency, that would be fantastic. And that would get us a quarter of the way to the end goal.
So I was looking at this and I was thinking, can we possibly ultimately in the plan incorporate the electrification of transportation, sort of phasing that in so that you're reducing your load through efficiency, but then you'll be adding electrical demand for your EV. So if we could just maybe create some scenarios for people, like a household's energy use, how it might shift over time, kind of thing.
Yeah, we can definitely model different scenarios. The challenges with all these, like the Reggie program and the portfolio standard, we don't know where they're going, so we would just have to agree on what we want the scenarios to look like.
yeah, right.
Assumptions are.
Yeah, yeah. But I put that here because, to me, this requires that we think outside the box a little bit, which is difficult to do in the municipal environment. But we can do it. We can look at all kinds of options and opportunities. And my personal approach to projects like this is to start without any constraints and then work from there and try to figure out what's feasible, what's viable, what pushes the envelope, what doesn't, and start to prioritize that way, if that makes sense.
It's hard to predict what technological advances will occur or what market conditions will occur, even in the near future.
I mean, Dan and I went to the auto show on Tuesday, being an opportunity to look at cars, but we were looking at EVs and plug-in hybrids, and it was just, as we started to talk to various companies, they would say, well, we have this now, but at the end of the year, we're going here, and it's just driving forward, and they couldn't necessarily always give us the details because it was process plus competition is going to be a process too. It was just amazing what,
Especially Toyota.
Yes, yeah.
They're very low.
And Subaru, they're just leaping ahead, and Hyundai is coming out with these solar cars.
Oh, that must have been fun, going to the show. Yeah.
And
Well,
I
think
was
next year-
amazed.
Next
Is
year,
it?
you'll actually see them.
Yeah.
It's a lot of talk right now.
Right,
But,
yeah.
But one of the things that struck me was, well, Exelon was there, so was Delmarva and Pico. The people we were talking to had no idea about Ready for 100. What are you guys doing?
Yeah.
Oh, that's really interesting. So it's not going both ways. And I mean, I've picked this up. You look at all the EVs and the plug-in hybrids.
That's amazing.
That this was a Pico that had pulled it in.
And I think battery technology over the next year or two is
Well,
supposed to
that's-
cross some threshold.
And
that
Dan
makes
asked
it more
about the
cost-effective.
recycling of
$100
old
per-
batteries, the hybrid batteries. What did they say? There's a
Well,
local.
Toyota has had since 2010 a program to reclaim the nickel from nickel hydride batteries.
Here in Pennsylvania. In Nash-
Globally. I
Yeah.
think. So they're ahead of the curve, I think, there. I don't know what it costs for an owner to do that. Everybody says, because the Prius battery is outliving its 8 years. I mean, we have a 2010, my son has a 2008 Prius, and still on the original battery, so I guess we'll see next decade.
Yeah.
What happens?
Speaking of technology, what about storage? Do you anticipate that there can be some recommendations around use of storage?
That's where the technology is a little unclear. I mean, batteries, large-scale battery storage is becoming more and more cost-effective, and the ability to reuse some of the materials from spent batteries, I think, are making strides in as well. Obviously, if you're relying on a lot of solar, you need storage. Wind power, you need storage as well. But I don't know that we have the answers. We're going to research it and find out what's underway.
Yeah, but I think we can develop scenarios with presumptions that this, within the next, 3 years, will be feasible, and what that would mean in terms of our ability to, again, achieve the goal. And the storage is so important, as you know, so.
Could I ask you at this point, the sequence, I mean, I've seen your timeline here, but.
Can you
I'm asking
speak
for-
up a little bit?
I'm asking for a different sequence, I guess, in terms of over the next decade or so, implementing your recommendations. There's electrification, there's microgrids, or whatever. I'm talking about hardware, not necessarily legislation. And for example, why would someone want to switch to electric heat if there is still a significant fossil fuel component to their electricity? So, are you advocating electrification in parallel with putting in a local solar energy source, or would electrification come after that? Because it's basically a retrofit that, except for new buildings, you would have to be convincing people to retrofit.
I think one of the things you want to do is at end of life of the existing system, that's when you consider electrification. You don't replace a 6-year-old natural gas furnace with a heat pump.
Right.
But when it reaches the end of its life. So in my house, when my central air went out and I had oil heat, I put in a high efficiency heat pump, and the goal for me with electrification was to generate 100% of my electricity with solar panels and have a an electric vehicle that I could also charge, or it requires possibly some storage as well. But that's kind of the long-term goal, be able to run my house and my transportation from renewable energy. But it's a long view that maybe some people won't take. That's part of the education process.
We do find in our work, when we first started the company, it was kind of hard for us to navigate how we do efficiency consulting. But what we discovered is the key, as Paul said, is when you have aging equipment, your maintenance bills are going up, it's
Right.
expensive, you have to change it out. That's the opportunity to sell on switching to
Right.
all electric systems.
Uh-huh.
And when we look at like the next phase of Act 129, that should be part of the advocacy work that we do is, these heat pumps, we should get big rebates for them. Make it so that it is financially a good move.
Is the heating, air conditioning from a heat pump to operate cost effective relative to a fossil fuel powered electricity?
I was switching from oil and it saved me money, but if I had natural gas because it was cheaper, I probably would have about broken even because the cooling was so efficient.
Good.
I
Okay.
cut my bill more than in half during the summer. In fact, I cut it, I think, 60%, but in the winter it did
Good.
stay about the same as oil was. So overall for the year I had a little bit of savings. The other benefit that I felt having kids, no carbon monoxide being generated from the heating in my house and not having to worry. I smell fumes, like what's going on with the heater right now. I actually took a photo at a friend's house 2 weeks ago and I walked in on a Sunday afternoon. I said, it smells kind of odd in your house. And we went down to the basement and the pipe taking the exhaust from the oil burner was leaning against the wall. It had come out of the hole in the wall and was just sitting there leaning against the block wall. And they called the emergency service and they came a day later.
Oh, that's nice.
But your point is well taken. These things are all happening in parallel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's not like we're going to have a rock solid story.
Right.
The Pico's now generating 50% solar, so it makes sense type thing. We have to push it all forward at the same time.
Right. I'm just thinking about the individual homeowner and businessman person who has a building that they're up for converting. And what incentive is there for them to convert to electricity besides the rebates? And it sounds like an operational cost is not that much different than if they were continuing to use fossil fuels, which is great.
We've also had a municipality that we're just about finished working with who put in a geothermal system. We really got them off fossil fuel, on-site natural gas combustion systems. And it's costing them more upfront, but they made the decision to do it because it's their building, they own it, they're there for the long term, and it's going to pay off.
Yes.
So these types of, the ability to show that the investment is worth it because you're going to save over time is really an important piece of the education too.
And as solar prices continue to come down, you can take advantage of that and generate 100% of your energy use with solar, where if you're 40% of your energy use is natural gas or oil, you can't really do anything about that. You've now built this infrastructure in place that locks you into a fossil fuel, and who knows what happens with those markets as they build pipelines to send it, liquefy it and send it to other countries or whatever they're going to do with it. The pipelines aren't coming to the users, they're going to Marcus Hook
To go offshore.
to go somewhere else.
Well, that's where I think the apartment complex that I told you about that was built in 1954 So it was oil and gas. The oil was during peak hours and the gas was off. So they did a lot of analysis. So there'll be a show and tell. And got rid of the boilers. Now they've gone to gas only. They're also inspecting all the apartments, and there are about 12 floors. They've switched the toilets to low flows, which uses 2.5 gallons, not 5, and inspected the washers. And since June, and it's now February, they've saved 1 million gallons of water.
Wow, yeah.
And they're saving on the gas. And now they're even talking about putting in a solar field.
That's great.
So
Once you get started,
you get, and
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
say to somebody, well, this is what I've done and this is the dollar saving. I think that's what, it's the show and tell aspect, which they did. Cadmus did, somebody from the public said to Cadmus, don't just tell us what we can do, let's find examples so we can literally show the bills, like
Right.
your gal did at your church with her show. And she showed her pre-solar electric bills and her post
Right.
solar, because she's not getting 100% from solar, but
Sure.
she's, so I think to get the facts, to get the education, to spread the word, this is a possibility and this is what someone has done, has got to be part of
I
the,
couldn't agree more. The storytelling
yes,
is
Yeah.
everything.
It
yes,
is.
it really is.
Yeah, people don't connect to a
Yeah, they
list
don't
of
connect to, like,
statistics
yeah.
if you keep just throwing numbers at them. It
Right.
kind of just
It's too
shuts people
theoretical.
down. And yeah, if you want to give an example and tell
It's
the
like a
story
woman
of how
we
it
know
came
who had
about.
an energy audit by Pico's. The guy says to her, you know, you could unplug the goldfish pond and save X.
Right.
And she went, I never thought of that. So,
Can I ask, is there, are there possible financing mechanisms, local ones, that, to help assist low-income households with, energy efficiency investments? Or is it more, figuring out what grants are already out there and just making people aware of them?
Well, I know PICO provides energy assessments, and I believe that if you're lower income, it's free.
They're free.
So,
Yeah.
And
That's the
anytime you
assessment
have-
though, right?
That's the assessment,
And maybe
right.
like light bulbs, but I mean, supposing you need to insulate your
Insulation.
roof or something
Yeah.
like that. So I guess I'm just hoping that, you know, because a proportion of the residents in Radnor, their energy burden is high.
Yeah.
And it would be great if we could make sure that we're making information available. But I also was just curious as to whether or not there are communities that have done some kind of a local green bond or something that,
I think there's state money and federal money that is paying entities that come out and will do an insulation for houses for low-income people. And so they'll do air sealing insulation
Okay.
and make a big difference. But they won't, I don't think they'll do things like replace their heating system or anything like that, but they at least can cut the energy bills for heating and cooling.
One thing that we've talked about in Westchester is
That's Catherine.
when we do
I was telling
Like-
Ben, who was going through the door.
when we do solarize and we're signing people up to buy solar systems, that we ask, you know, in the borough of Westchester, for example, we have an incredibly diverse population of people, economically and otherwise, that we would ask the people who can afford it to pay more for their systems and subsidize the people on the other side of town as a community initiative, and we think that we could make that work.
wow, that would be pretty cool.
I counted the number of banks driving from the corner of Old Eagle School Road and
Get corporate
Lancaster
sponsors.
till I
Yeah.
got to Rosemont, and there were 13 different, I'm not saying 13 banks, I'm saying 13 different banking entities.
Mhm.
Wow.
Yep.
So,
Did you count the drugstores, the CVS's?
no, I just was counting banks,
Where the
Santander,
money is.
There's money in that.
who were the different entities, TD and whatever they all are. There were 13 different
Yeah.
banking companies in Radnor. And that was just along Lancaster.
Yep. So this is the schedule. It's aggressive, there's no question. And our next steps are, I'm working on step 2, but we've got to get these stakeholder,
And that we
work.
need to get more of that information
Yes,
to you.
so next week, Monday, we need to hit that hard so
Alright.
we can get that moving. That'll be our next step. I don't know if you want to go through this in detail, if you've all looked at it.
We have.
Okay.
So when
I'm
you say
gonna-
Monday,
Oh, sorry.
that's handled online or face to face with you?
No, it's online.
It's online.
And we had one that we were working on, and it went in Excel to Diane for you to transfer to Google. I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
I'll put it on Google Drive.
Somehow older people don't take to Google Drive as quickly as younger people. But we will try to polish that up
Yes,
as much as we
we
can.
need to get moving on that. That's
Right.
great.
I just need to apologize quickly. I showed up
Yeah.
late and I have to leave
Oh,
early.
that's all right.
That's
We
all
only
right.
have 26 minutes before we have to
Right.
turn off, and because there's another meeting that Mary's
I'm
running
glad you
at
could
6:30.
come. Thank you.
Yeah, so-
But I'm
I
glad
wanted
you
to be
came
part of
because you
it.
had a lot of
Yes.
good information. I mean, one of the things we need to know is what are the good electric heat pumps? I mean, I've gone on Googled them, and there are 20 different brands, and I have not a clue.
Right.
So feeding stuff to us, then we can do the research to begin to talk about it.
There's some education you need to do with the contractors who install them as well. When I was buying mine, the installer tried to talk me out of it. He said, just get the minimum efficiency one allowed by code. You'll save yourself $1,500. And I said, well, what about the energy that I'm saving by using the more efficient one? It's like, yeah, but we can't really calculate that for you very well. I said, that's okay, I can do that myself. But most people can't do that. And so-
That's right.
And so you have to get away from letting the contractors
Right. They need to be led a
what
little
not
bit.
to do. I was surprised that they tried to talk me out of paying them more.
That is
That's
what's
it.
up.
Well, and that is a problem when someone you say, and they're looking at dollars, not efficiency.
Yeah.
So-
Short-term, upfront
Yeah.
costs.
They want to come in with the low bid, so you'll buy from them.
Yeah,
Right.
that's it. So, thank you, and
No,
I'll see
thank
you
you
guys
for
again.
coming.
Part of the
Great to meet you.
process. Yeah. Look forward to continuing to
Yeah.
work with you.
See ya.
Thank you. Bye.
So the next thing that I really wanted to talk about is what to push out to the community at this point in time. Now, I did write this up. There's a lot of information in here. It's technical. It's not telling a story. The problem with, the first step is that the task was to uncover this rather technical information as a
Yes.
foundation for our beginning. I'm a little hesitant just to put this out there. I want to see what you think and get your ideas on maybe how much does the community know about this project? Maybe what we do first is introduce this project to the community. Why? What are the goals? And maybe some of these pieces of information about, look at all this energy that you're using.
Exactly. Don't tell them that we're only 7.8%.
Yeah.
Somebody will say, well, that's really good. Why should we do anything?
Yeah.
Well, that number, the 10th highest
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Some of
energy.
those little pieces of information that might
Yeah.
make
Well-
sense to them.
Why don't we have a crack at developing something based on all of this, that's short, sweet, and to the point, submit it to you for veracity,
Okay.
and then we'll do it.
And what do we mean, would we put like a newsletter on the website?
And also
Is that
send
what
a
we're thinking?
newsletter to our 285
We-
But I mean, is that what you're thinking? We have on the township, there's a particular site for this project, right?
On the township site?
Sort of. The
Yeah.
township's in the process of getting a whole new vendor to develop
Wonder
a
why I couldn't
whole
find it.
new
Timing.
website. So, we do have Molly, who's not here, who's the PR person, and she has said, what do you want me to put out? That's on social media. That'll be Twitter and Facebook, which really
Right.
doesn't
And once
cut
we
it.
develop this, we can give her little pieces of it.
Give her
to put out.
pieces of it. We do have a mainline newspaper,
Mhm.
but the woman who covered Radnor has another job, and the newspaper has no intention of replacing her to the township. So the
Well, you know
whole
what I
We
do
can
with,
always write
with,
an article.
with the
Press
daily
release,
local news is I call them every Monday morning and say, here's what I have for you. And I write it for them and I submit pictures and they run it because of they don't have the
They need
resources to
Right.
do the work.
So we need to,
We could, we could write a little press release, we could have a picture of all of us together, the project kicks off and, create some fanfare and submit it to them and maybe they would publish it.
and also
You'd like to do
submit it
that?
to Molly,
Yeah.
Okay,
and
great.
she'll get it out. But we have lost a valuable resource, because
Yeah.
Linda Stein, she was assigned to Radnor and she attended everything.
That's a shame.
Well,
The local paper is just dying.
they are dying.
And it's so unfortunate because there's so much good work they could do.
Well, it looks like Patch around here
Yes.
may try to fill that role,
Yeah.
but it doesn't. And then there's Backdoor.
Well, maybe we should call them and tell
Next
them,
door.
this is why I subscribe to the newspaper. And
Yeah, but I don't subscribe,
Well,
I
I
read it
do.
online.
Well-
And actually,
There you have it.
there's a woman who lives in the township who works for the Enquirer, and she says 3 to 5 years and the Enquirer will be gone.
Oh, that's.
Well, except it's a
terrible.
nonprofit now. I mean,
Yeah.
they, they're,
But they're shuffling chairs like crazy.
But I buy my paper at Giant. I don't subscribe
You're a
either,
good
but
person.
we buy. I like to hold the newspaper.
Yeah, but I don't want to recycle it.
And I love to be able to read what happened at the township commissioners
Yeah,
meeting.
I know.
And that,
You're not going to get it.
well,
There's also the Delaware County Daily Times. That's more down county.
And
Yeah.
the municipality has a newsletter? No.
No,
Okay.
they gave that up. Now they're talking about an electronic newsletter because it was brought up Monday night, and that's great. And then the troublemaker goes to the head of PR and says, do you realize there are people in this township who do not have computers?
Well, yes, but that doesn't mean you don't go to the ones who do.
That's right.
Yeah.
What I wanted to know was to include them,
Mm-hmm.
because my
Library.
impression is they're minorities and lower income.
We had the same discussion in Westchester, and some elderly people do not have, lots of internet access. So we actually started publishing a paper newsletter that we mail out, and people loved it.
really,
Loved it. It's not cheap though.
Maybe that sector can opt in,
Yeah.
something like that. So
Yes.
that everybody isn't getting it when you don't really, everybody doesn't need it.
Yeah.
Right.
there's
Mailing
also
list.
the TV station.
Yes, and we
Ah,
can
right.
do shows.
right.
That's true.
I guess I'm just wondering if there's any chance of, I don't know, maybe when you're gonna be back in town at some point to try and do an interview with you.
I would do that. Just
Vince
Okay.
Celli, I have a fairly good relationship with Vince. And
Well,
I
it
think
would be so
they're
great.
always looking for
Uh-huh.
people to do show. And they're now doing, it's Narberth, Lower Merion, Radnor. They've enlarged it and
Great.
combined it. So
Okay.
it is a possibility.
All right, I have that written down, so.
Which is either FiOS or Comcast, but they will do it on, upload it to YouTube. So
Okay.
if you don't have cable, you can,
Great.
but you have the internet, you can
Right.
get it.
Okay,
So that is a possibility.
so then you'll put, even if it's just bullet points or
Yes.
whatever, and then I'll
But then-
pull it together and
Right.
we'll figure out, how to get that out to the community.
Yep.
And
Yes.
we can turn it into a press release as well.
Exactly.
And if you'd like to call the TV station, I'm happy to come and do that.
All right.
And guys, did we dismiss the patch as an avenue of advertising? Because
I wouldn't dismiss anything.
No.
Okay.
I think once you have the content, it can go, you can send it to multiple places.
We
Right,
should
I mean,
develop,
the minute you sign up for
a
patch,
Distro
communications
list.
list, yeah.
you get the heading of their articles, or
Right.
lead articles in
Right.
your Gmail. So I know all the gossip around town.
I'm glad you look at
That's
it.
the
I
next
mostly
meeting.
dump it.
You know what I could do is, when I put the other document up on Google, I'll put a second one up that's a list of communication targets, so we can put all the papers and the TV station and patch, and you guys can just fill in whatever you think is gonna work for your
Great.
community.
Thank you.
So before I forget, Diane, this slideshow, you sent it sort of as a preliminary and you've done an update.
Yes,
Would you send me that?
I will. There's 2 things I need to fix. I will fix those.
So I can distribute it and we can then have it available to the commissioners because we need to educate them first. And it'll be on the page on the existing website because didn't Bill White, I think Bill White said it was going to be 6 months
Is that what-
till the new website
That sounds about right here for development.
is
but I'm
going to
not
be,
sure.
what it's going to be if you only want to see at a commissioners meeting and you don't come, and you only want to see item so-and-so, you're going to be able to queue to that particular
That'd be nice.
item, so you
Great.
don't have to watch 5 hours. of
Yeah, I do
TV.
that. I scroll through.
So
yeah.
that's what they're doing,
Okay.
is trying to
Great.
make it much easier to
Uh-huh.
handle.
That's good.
So I know that in this document, you said that, click here for the link to Radnor website.
Yeah, that was just an idea. This is a
Right.
draft.
Oh, okay.
So,
So I tried to do that, but I couldn't.
Oh, yeah, no,
I
it's-
couldn't-
there's
I
no
couldn't
live
find the
link
Green
there.
Team on the
Yeah.
Radnor website.
It's under RF 100, on the front page at the very bottom.
At least we're on the front page.
So
What's
that's,
At least we're on the front page. Below the fold, but.
Okay, so I'll try that again.
anything else,
So
guys?
then so the slideshow that you did will
Mhm.
be on our Ready for 100 website page, or how will we get access to
You're
that?
Diane's gonna send it to me and I'm gonna distribute it to the green team.
Okay.
Is there any problem with our putting it on the Delaware County Ready for 100 site?
I don't think so, no.
Okay,
Yeah,
That'd
I'll
be great.
verify that with Paul, but I see
Okay.
no problem.
great.
The other
I
thing
can
is
send,
the-
you're gonna write that down because I
Yeah.
can send you.
I
the
think,
community handbook that you sent out, the 134-page one.
I had
So-
to split it in half because it was so big.
Well, so I wanted to send it out to the rest of the group because they're cowards and they didn't want to download it because it says Google can't scan
I
it.
I downloaded it.
I did too. But, so I guess it's Dan was the
Dan
security
was
cat.
the download.
But
Oh, I didn't realize you were the
the
security.
cautious person. So
Chicken.
I tried to email it to people and it wouldn't let me do it because it was too big.
It's too big.
So, if
Do you
there's
really
another way.
want to send it to everybody?
Well, I want to send it to this group.
Oh. So
Isn't
how was
it-
I able to download it? It came through Bill Saby today. And I
Isn't it
downloaded
appended to
it.
your proposal?
Yeah, didn't
Yes.
we already get this?
The Radnor Township part is in the proposal. I don't know all of Delaware County
I
is.
put it was an example of prior work that
Right.
we've done, so it was
Okay.
uploaded to PenBid as part of our proposal.
Yeah. This
I
is-
can,
we
next
can
time
get
I
to
see
that.
you, put it on a thumb drive and,
And we can,
But I mean, we can already access it there, right?
through Bill, we can,
So I was able to download it.
So was
but
I.
Dan had sent out a message saying it needs to go through a virus scan. Google
Oh,
will
it's a virus
download it
scan.
without
I
a
see.
virus
No,
scan.
it-
So, but you can
Yeah.
click
no,
on
it
yes. I'll
doesn't
go
say
ahead
it
with
had to go through it.
No,
It said
that's
this
right.
has
Right.
not gone through
Right.
a virus scan. And I went, I'm a Mac.
me too. I use
I'll
a Mac
do
at
it.
home.
I'll do it.
No worries.
It was
Yeah.
no problem. And then I have cleaned my Mac on my computer.
I know.
So after I downloaded it, I ran
Just did a
clean my
scrub.
Mac.
Yeah.
And it detects anything that's got a virus, so it's clean. As far as I'm concerned, on my computer,
Well,
it came in.
I have McAfee too. I have the McAfee
Yeah.
virus detector, but
So is there, so just to reiterate.
Yes,
I'm gonna get as much stakeholder stuff to you by Monday.
correct.
And we're going to work on,
That's like contact information or new stakeholders?
complete the stakeholder
Okay,
list of
got it.
potentials. And I'm gonna talk to Vince Celli, which is the TV station. And we're gonna take this and
Draft a short.
draft something, and then we're gonna send it to Diane.
So I guess the question I wanted to ask of you is if there's a particular slide in this slide deck that we want you to use, can we say, use X
Absolutely.
slide on whatever
Anything you
page?
see here that you think would be useful, for sure. And also in here,
I think
Yes.
the slide, the piece that Radnor needs to see is this graphic.
yeah, I like that.
The commercial, the educational. Yeah, it's really, I think it gives them a graphic.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Right, yeah.
I mean, the pie
And I-
chart shows the usage.
I kind of like the solar graph too.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, yes,
Yes.
yeah, that's
Yes.
wonderful.
Let me see. Yeah. Okay. Great, okay, and then I will make these two corrections and send you the slide deck.
Perfect.
I'll be sure Paul's okay with putting it on the Ready for 100.
Wonderful, great.
And I will put on Google the stakeholder document as well as a communications contact list.
Perfect.
Great.
Perfect.
Is there anything we're missing for now?
We have a question, we'll ask.
Okay. That's me.
Ben, do you have any questions?
I have no questions.
And I did, I don't know if everybody was here, when Diane sent me this, I sent it to Jennifer here. And it will go in the packet that Bill White sends out weekly to
Well,
the commissioners.
The corrected version would be better.
Not that.
Well, but I did have in here like
The
a,
commissioner, for the meetings, or?
Not in the
With
packet.
the
Bill's
finance.
sending out something
Oh, okay.
weekly is what Jennifer told me.
I did have this suggested link. I should take that out.
Yes.
So I'll
Yeah.
resend this to you as well.
Okay. But that way, because not one commissioner came.
Right. No, no, I think it'd be great for them to have it. I was just noting she wanted to fix a couple of those
Right.
statistics.
Right.
Uh,
Okay, thank you, thank you, thank you,
Wow.
thank you, thank you.
So we keep our little name tag.
All right.
You-
And so it
If you want her, you
begins.
can give them all
That's
back.
on the yes. Great
Thank
kickoff.
you.
Well,
And this way, meeting will be on,
Good question.
no, it'll be up tomorrow on YouTube on the Township website, so that anybody